The silence of the high Himalayas is not empty. It is a heavy, smothering thing, punctuated only by the brutal rasp of the wind slicing across granite peaks. This cold, bone-aching stillness holds the secret of survival, or the stark reality of failure. Imagine a world where the air itself threatens to crystallize your lungs, where life is measured minute by frigid minute. In that unforgiving expanse, against the backdrop of eternal snows, a profound tragedy was unfolding, but within that tragedy lay the seed of an unbelievable rescue. What you are about to witness is a raw, extraordinary fight for life, an unexpected bond forged in ice, and a story so miraculous, it defies every expectation of the wild. Before we dive deeper into the moment that changed everything, take one quick second right now, hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. Your immediate support is crucial and ensures we can continue to bring these powerful stories of survival and compassion to light. This is not a tale of predictable heroism, but of quiet, desperate humanity responding to an instinctual cry. Elias, a lone researcher specializing in the remote behavior of snow leopards, understood the harsh covenant of the mountains. He knew the thin margin between existence and extinction up here, where the Kali Gandaki Gorge clawed its way toward the sky. For weeks, the weather had been a relentless enemy, pushing temperatures far below the 0 point, a cold that didn't merely chill the skin but seemed to freeze the marrow itself. On this particular morning, navigating through a treacherous field of sastrugi, ridged snow shaped by the punishing wind, Elias was focused solely on finding his cache of supplies, his mind preoccupied with the logistics of survival. But the mountains had another assignment for him. Rounding a monolithic gray outcrop, half-sheathed in ice, Elias's eyes caught a patch of anomalous dark color against the brilliant, blinding white. It was too small to be a leopard, too dense to be debris. As he cautiously approached, sinking slightly with each step into the crunchy, deceptive powder, the shape resolved itself into something agonizingly clear, a tableau of the wild's indifferent cruelty. It was a rhesus macaque, a female, curled tightly, her body already stiff, claimed by the merciless frost. The fur, usually sleek and vibrant, was matted with rime, dusted white. Her position suggested a final, futile attempt to shelter against the storm's full fury. Elias stopped dead, the only sound his own labored breath clouding the frigid air. Death here was commonplace, a quick, anonymous end, but what held his gaze was not the death, but the fragile, impossible persistence of life clinging to it. Tucked tightly against the mother's rigid flank, nestled deep into the crook of her neck, was a baby. Tiny. Utterly vulnerable. The infant monkey was not moving, save for a faint, almost imperceptible shuddering that seemed less like life and more like the shivering of the surrounding ice. Its small hands, no thicker than Elias's thumb, were clenched desperately into the mother's frozen pelt. It was seeking warmth from a source that had betrayed it hours ago, perhaps even longer. How long had this tiny creature been held hostage by the cold, drawing hope from a vessel already empty? Was the fight already lost, and was this just a delayed, cruel conclusion? The moment was a stark collision between the ethics of his work and the mandate of his soul. Researchers observe, they do not interfere. The laws of nature, particularly in these desolate altitudes, must play out. But looking at that miniature still form, pressed against the granite-hard body of its mother, Elias felt the cold resolve of his profession shatter. This was not a scientific variable, it was a heartbeat fading in the snow. He knew that even a few more minutes exposed to the wind chill would extinguish that weak flicker entirely. He had to decide instantly, walk away and respect the cycle, or intervene and accept the immense, unpredictable burden of saving a life that was meant to be wild. His heavy gloves made the movements clumsy, exaggerated. He had to separate the baby, an act he knew might cause damage to the already compromised limbs. The macaque infant's small, frost-coated body was stiff, its tiny fingers seemingly frozen to the mother's fur by the crystallized moisture of their final embrace. Elias worked with a terrified tenderness, his breath held tight in his chest, praying he wouldn't snap a delicate bone. He gently tried to peel the infant away, applying minuscule, careful pressure. But the grip was absolute. Instinctively, The baby's survival mechanism had locked it to its mother, and now that same instinct threatened to be its final undoing. The cold had created a biological weld. He realized he couldn't tear them apart. He had to sever the fur around the infant's fingers, a surgical impossibility in the open air with frozen hands. He rummaged frantically in his pack, pulling out a multi-tool, his vision blurring slightly from the sudden adrenaline rush. The thin blade of the knife felt massive and dangerous. With excruciating slowness, he began to shave away the thick coat surrounding the tiny, white-knuckled grip, careful not to pierce the skin underneath. Each microscopic cut felt like an eternity. Finally, after what seemed like an hour of tense, agonizing labor, the baby was free. It was utterly lifeless in his hands, unnervingly light, completely unresponsive to the sudden change in temperature or environment. There was no resistance, no cry, just a terrifying inertia. Elias knew carrying it in his pocket was useless. The ambient temperature of his coat wouldn't penetrate the hypothermic core. He had to create immediate, intimate heat. This tiny creature had endured the unimaginable, clinging to hope against the certainty of death. The next step was the most radical, demanding a level of trust and vulnerability that no human in the wild should offer. You won't believe the method Elias used to bring life back to this fragile monkey. Without hesitation, Elias unzipped his heavy, insulated outer parka and then his thick fleece, exposing the thermal base layer covering his chest. He took the fragile, rigid infant, wrapped it loosely in a clean handkerchief from his pocket, and tucked it directly against his skin, pressing the bundle securely under his inner layers, zipping everything back up tight. The shock of the cold body against his warm torso was sharp, almost painful, but he knew the risk had to be taken. Direct, primal body heat was the only chance. He abandoned his supply search entirely and began the frantic, controlled scramble back to his small, insulated research shelter, a journey that usually took 2 hours but which he covered in less than one, adrenaline masking the fatigue and the pain of the climb. Every jarring step was a potential injury to the small life nestled against his heart. Once inside the shelter, the atmosphere changed instantly from hostile ice to tense, focused activity. Elias lit the small stove, creating a marginal zone of warmth, but he didn't dare remove the baby yet. He sat, leaning back, using his hands to press against his chest, transferring as much warmth as possible. The minutes stretched into an eternity. He spoke softly, uselessly, just to fill the terrifying silence. He imagined the infant's body temperature slowly, agonizingly creeping upward, fighting the death grip of the frost. Still nothing. No twitch, no sign of consciousness. Doubt began to claw at the edge of his resolve. Had he only prolonged suffering? Was he holding a body that was already gone? Just as the despair threatened to overwhelm him, a sensation. A microscopic shift against his chest. Then, a shudder, much stronger than the weak tremor he had first observed in the snow. And then, the sound. A small, dry, high-pitched peep. It was the sound of air moving, of life asserting itself against the odds. It was the weakest cry he had ever heard, yet it was the most beautiful. Elias unzipped his jacket slowly, looking down at the small, dark face blinking weakly against the sudden light. The eyes were unfocused, but they were open. The baby monkey was impossibly small, truly no bigger than the span of his hand, and utterly defenseless. He felt a fierce, immediate connection, a bond forged in the crucible of absolute necessity. He named the tiny survivor Quito, a word that resonated with meaning in the local dialects. It meant precious one. Quito was alive, but only barely. He had won the first battle against the cold, but the war for Quito's survival, feeding, warming, and nurturing a wild infant in an isolated research station, was only just beginning. Quito was orphaned, weak, and now entirely dependent on the strange, giant creature who had offered his own body as a sanctuary. What immense challenges lay ahead for Elias trying to raise a wild animal in an environment that demanded absolute self-sufficiency. How would Quito adapt to this unnatural intervention? You won't want to miss the unbelievable challenges and heart-stopping moments that follow. Click here immediately to watch Part 2 and witness the miraculous transformation. But first, show your support for Quito's journey. subscribe, hit the like button for this incredible survival story, and comment below right now telling us which country or city you are watching this extraordinary rescue from. The fragile pulse Liam felt beneath that cold, damp fur was the only thing standing between hope and absolute heartbreak. He knew that the next few moments would determine everything. The weight of that tiny life, no bigger than his outstretched hand, pressed a sudden, terrifying urgency upon him. Before we dive deeper into this impossible rescue, if you are moved by stories of survival and compassion, stories of moments where humanity truly shines brightest against the darkest odds, please take a second, hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. Your support helps us share these incredible moments of connection and resilience with the world. What he saw next, as he gently peeled the infant from the icy embrace of its deceased mother, wasn't just a physical struggle. It was a profound testament to the primal, desperate will to live. The baby's grip on its mother was not merely instinctual. It was frozen in place, a final, rigid declaration of dependence that Liam had to slowly, carefully unwind. But rescuing the baby from the body was only the first, simplest hurdle. Survival, lasting, meaningful survival, required a miracle Liam wasn't sure he possessed the power to provide. The Siberian wind didn't just bite, it gnawed. It was a sterile, beautiful graveyard of ice and stunted pines, and the light of the sinking sun cast long, unforgiving shadows that seemed to mock the warmth Liam was so desperately trying to conserve. He secured his camera quickly, his movements precise despite the shaking in his hands, knowing that documenting the event was secondary to the biological clock ticking down against the baby's fragile metabolism. He carefully wrapped the tiny infant inside his thickest wool scarf, bundling it next to his own chest, directly beneath his thermal layers. He felt the unnerving lightness of its body, a weightless bundle of desperate need and cold bone. Every second spent standing still meant risking frostbite, the deadly creeping white numbness that could claim fingers and toes before a person even registered the pain. But every hurried, uneven step meant risking jarring the baby out of its precarious hold on existence. Liam had to become a study in contradiction, swift yet delicate, strong yet utterly gentle. His initial attempts to warm the creature with simple body heat were failing at an agonizing pace. The baby's shivering wasn't the healthy, vital kind of tremor that precedes warming. It was the exhausted, fading flutter of a life force preparing to give up. The cold had penetrated too deeply, settling into the core. Liam could feel the chill radiating through the thick wool, a stark reminder that time was rapidly dissolving. He needed warmth, immediate shelter, and crucially, liquid nourishment, something sugary, something warm, something his small passenger could actually digest. The nearest outpost, a seasonal ranger station, was a grueling, uphill trek away, a distance that felt like an entire continent when carrying such a delicate burden. The terrain was unforgiving, hidden ice patches lurked beneath a deceptive dusting of fresh snow, and the incline was steep enough to burn the reserves of even a well-fed, rested man. Liam was neither. He was running on pure adrenaline, fueled by the image of the mother's final, sacrificial embrace. He remembered the rules of extreme cold survival. Treat hydration first. He stopped just long enough to melt a small handful of snow in his cupped hand, letting the heat of his palm turn it into liquid droplets. He tried to coax the baby to take a single drop, using the tip of his gloved finger, but the tiny mouth remained tightly clamped, the jaw locked against the cold. The rejection was a terrifying confirmation, the hypothermia was too advanced. Swallowing was likely difficult, if not impossible. The infant was shutting down. The biggest loop of panic remained wide open. Even if he could reach civilization, even if he made it to the ranger station, what does one feed a critically hypothermic baby monkey? Could a human environment, no matter how kind, ever truly replace the intricate biological necessity of its mother's milk, its mother's specialized touch, the innate protection of the troop? And would the emotional trauma of the loss doom the infant before the cold could even finish its deadly work? Liam pushed forward, using the last vestiges of the daylight. The trees began to thin, revealing massive, jagged rock formations that offer no comfort, only sharp edges. He had to keep talking, a low, guttural murmur meant to soothe both the infant and the desperate fear rising in his own throat. "We're going to make it, little one. We just need to keep moving. Just a little further." He felt the baby stir faintly, a small, involuntary movement of a tiny hand reaching out from the bundle. For a heart-stopping second, he thought it was a sign of improvement, a surge of strength. But then the movement faded, replaced by a slight, high-pitched whimper, a sound so unbearably fragile that it felt like a physical strike to Liam's chest. The whimper wasn't a cry of hunger or fear. It was the sound of utter exhaustion, the last echo of life before silence. Suddenly, the path narrowed. He misjudged a step, his heavy boots slipping on black ice concealed beneath a wind drift. He stumbled, catching himself violently on a sharp rock face, the impact jarring his shoulder and sending a white-hot wave of pain through his arm. Everything went silent. He froze, leaning heavily against the rock, terrified to move. He held the bundle tightly, his heart hammering against the baby's form. Was it breathing? Had he just, through carelessness, ended the fragile life he had fought so hard to save? He waited, breath held tight, for one agonizing beat. Then a shudder, a slight, weak tremor in the bundle. The baby was startled, but miraculously it was still alive. The near-fatal mistake served as a brutal pattern interrupt, reinforcing the reality that every step here was taken on the knife's edge of disaster. He knew then that he could not continue the journey in darkness. Not with this precious cargo. He needed temporary, immediate shelter. He scanned the landscape wildly, his eyes stinging from the freezing air. He spotted a shallow indentation, a small, rocky overhang beneath a cluster of thick-needled conifers, offering a minimal shield against the cutting wind. It was far from perfect, but it was the best he could hope for in the vast, emptying wilderness. He thought finding the baby was the hardest part, but surviving the next hour was proving to be the real trial by fire. You won't believe the lengths Liam had to go to just to keep a flicker of warmth in that impossibly small body. Keep watching, because what happens inside that makeshift shelter changed everything. Once inside the meager shelter, Liam immediately addressed the critical need for heat. He pulled out his emergency kit. Among the few non-essential items he carried was a small pack of chemical hand warmers. They were designed for his own fingers, but this was an extreme circumstance. He activated 2 of them, tucking them strategically into the scarf, ensuring they were near the baby's body but not in direct contact with its delicate skin. He stripped down to his inner thermal shirt, ignoring the sudden shock of cold, and gently moved the baby from the scarf directly against his own skin, pressing it into the soft warmth of his armpit, the body's natural heat core. The sensation of the cold, feather-light body against his chest was overwhelming. For the first time, he saw the baby clearly. Its fur was fine, charcoal gray, still damp from the melted ice. Its face was heartbreakingly small, dominated by huge, dark eyes that were currently closed, ringed with exhaustion and cold. It was clearly a male, and he possessed the most disproportionately large, beautiful ears Liam had ever seen. The heat transference worked slowly, painstakingly. Minutes stretched into hours. Liam began to feel the draining effects of the sustained cold on his own body, the insidious fatigue that preys on rescue workers. He had to fight the urge to close his eyes, knowing that sleep could be fatal for both of them. Then, a flicker. He felt a tiny spasm in his armpit. He looked down and saw one of the baby's miniature hands, tipped with perfect, delicate nails, twitching. And then, slowly, deliberately, that hand found Liam's skin enclosed, not with the rigid grasp of a freezing animal, but with a small, desperate grip of recognition, of need. It was a pressure no heavier than a few grains of sand, yet it anchored Liam to the world. It was the emotional payoff he desperately needed, the clear signal that he wasn't just holding a frozen object, he was holding a sentient, fighting life. Fueled by this minuscule sign of hope, he tried the water again, this time adding a minuscule amount of emergency sugar packet to the liquid. He dribbled it slowly along the baby's lip, allowing the liquid to wick into the mouth. This time, the baby swallowed. A single, reluctant, but undeniable swallow. But the night was not through with them. Just as the faint light of pre-dawn began to bleed a pale violet across the peaks, the baby's breathing, which had become shallow and regular, suddenly hitched. The faint, continuous rhythm against Liam's chest faltered. The tiny heart fluttered once, twice, and then seemed to pause completely. The small body went limp. Fear turned into a cold, paralyzing rage of helplessness. He had brought it this far, only for the cold to claim it in the supposed safety of the shelter. Liam refused to accept it. He pulled the baby out, laying it gently on his thigh. He worked furiously, rubbing the minuscule limbs to stimulate circulation, forcing his warm breath over the face. He thought of mouth-to-snout resuscitation, an absurd, desperate measure in the wilderness, yet he did it, a single, small puff of warm air into the minuscule nostrils. It was an act of raw, desperate love, fueled by the memory of that tiny grip moments before. Then a gasp. A single, ragged, miraculous gasp. The baby coughed weakly, and the faint, fluttering heartbeat returned, quick and erratic, but present. The immediate crisis of apnea was averted, but the struggle had exhausted both of them to the core. Liam knew he could not survive another hour passively in the wilderness. The baby needed professional, continuous care. He had to reach the village, now, before the cold could finish its attack. With the baby stabilized enough to move again, tucked deep inside his warmest layers, Liam rose. He felt the faint but continuous rhythm of life against his chest. The next phase of the journey, the final push into human civilization, would present ethical and medical challenges far greater than the wild ever had. He needed to find specialized help, and he needed to find it fast, before this flicker of life finally succumbed. Don't miss the conclusion to this unbelievable rescue story in Part 3. What happens when Liam tries to introduce this fragile creature to human care? What is the unbelievable turn of events that no one saw coming? Hit the subscribe button, give this video a like, and tell us in the comments below, from which country or city are you watching this story unfold? We read every comment. The clinic's air was thick with the scent of antiseptic and unspoken dread. We left Elian in the agonizing first hour, where the frantic energy of the rescue had given way to the terrifying stillness of a waiting game. Hit that like button right now and subscribe, because the end of this journey isn't just survival, it's a twist that fundamentally redefines what we believe about interspecies connections and unconditional love. You have to witness this unbelievable final act. The immediate danger had been hypothermia, but once the tiny creature, now officially named Kiko, for his persistent, fragile cries, was stabilized in the incubator, the real enemy emerged, the failure to thrive. It is a slow, silent killer unique to orphan primates, a deep grief that medical intervention alone cannot cure. Kiko refused the syringe. He rejected the synthetic milk formula specially designed for his species. His eyes, dark pools of ancient sorrow, remained unfocused, fixed on nothingness. He was not just physically cold, he was emotionally frozen, stuck in that final, horrifying memory of the jungle floor, clinging to a warmth that had failed him. Elian refused to leave the vet's side, sleeping on a cramped chair, waking every hour to watch the rise and fall of Kiko's minuscule chest. The doctor explained the grim truth: baby monkeys require constant, 24-hour physical contact. They need the weight of their mother, the rhythm of her heartbeat, the perpetual assurance of grooming, the specific pressure of being held in a certain way that regulates their nervous system. Kiko had heat, but he lacked density. He had food offered, but he lacked the ritual of feeding. The incubator was saving his life, but simultaneously draining his will to live. The open loops of concern tightened into a knot of desperation. How do you replicate a mother? How do you replace millions of years of evolutionary bonding instinct with sterile glass and metal? The veterinary team tried every standard intervention: a stuffed monkey toy warmed to body temperature, a small ticking clock wrapped in fleece to mimic a heartbeat, even recordings of monkey troop chatter. Kiko remained inert, his grip weak, his spirit fading like a damp flame. Every attempt at force feeding was met with resistance, a gentle but firm refusal to participate in life without his first true anchor. Then came the moment of profound clarity, fueled by exhaustion and despair. Elian looked at the lifeless toy in the incubator and knew it was fundamentally wrong. The monkey needed flesh, needed the electric hum of a living being. Defying the worried glances of the nurse, Elian reached into the incubator, gently lifting Kiko. He peeled back his own heavy wool shirt, placing the infant directly against the warm skin over his pectoral muscle. Kiko was placed exactly where his mother's heart would have been. For a full minute, nothing changed. Then, a shudder ran through Kiko's body. He instinctively curled his tail, not around Elian's finger, but pressing his whole body weight into Elian's chest. He wasn't seeking just heat, he was seeking pressure, the secure, heavy presence that spelled safety. Elian held him there for hours, talking softly, feeling the terrifying lightness of the monkey's body. Slowly, miraculously, Kiko relaxed. His breathing deepened. When the vet tentatively offered the syringe while Kiko was nestled against Elian, the monkey accepted the milk, swallowing small, deliberate amounts for the first time in days. This was a major breakthrough, but it presented a new, unsustainable problem. Elian couldn't become Kiko's perpetual surrogate. He had a life, a job, and the sanctuary was expecting the transfer soon. But the prospect of separation now felt cruel, a guaranteed death sentence. If you thought saving Kiko from the freezing jungle was the hardest part, you were profoundly wrong. The psychological battle for his will to live was the true test, demanding a connection that medical science couldn't provide. But watch closely now, because the unbelievable solution wasn't a human cure. It was a bond that defies species, a moment so pure it was captured on film and went viral for reasons no one expected. Stay tuned, because the true meaning of family is about to be redefined in the most heartwarming way imaginable. Elian took Kiko home, knowing the risk. He rigged a small basket beside his bed, lined with heated pads, but Kiko only cried unless he was pressed against Elian's body. The exhaustion was overwhelming. Elian understood the scientific term, contact comfort, but he felt the agonizing emotional truth. Kiko was simply heartbroken, and a human chest was a temporary, if functional, substitute. Then, there was Luna. Luna, Elian's gentle, massive German shepherd, had recently suffered her own loss, a litter of pups that hadn't survived the delivery. She was restless, carrying an aching maternal energy with nowhere to go. She had watched the frantic early days with detached curiosity, but when Elian started carrying the tiny monkey against his chest, Luna's demeanor shifted. She would approach Elian slowly, whining softly, sniffing at the strange new scent emanating from his shirt. The vet had vehemently warned against this. Dogs are predators, monkeys are prey. The slightest wrong move, a playful nip, a territorial growl, and Kiko would be gone. But Elian saw something in Luna's sad, amber eyes, a mirroring of the grief Kiko carried. One afternoon, desperate for sleep, Elian made a decision that felt simultaneously reckless and inevitable. He was sitting on the floor, holding Kiko, who was squirming in mild discomfort. Luna approached and lay her head gently on Elian's lap, emitting a soft, low rumble, not a growl, but a sound of deep, empathetic comfort. Elian slowly, with immense caution, placed Kiko on the thick fur of Luna's back. The air froze. Every muscle in Elian's body tensed, ready to snatch the baby back. Kiko, feeling the immense, immediate warmth and the soft, dense cushioning of Luna's coat, froze too. His tiny hands, which had been weakly searching for Elian's skin, instinctively grabbed a handful of the long fur near Luna's neck. He pressed his face into the soft heat, feeling the massive, slow rhythm of her dog heart beneath his ear. The most unbelievable thing happened next. Luna did not react with confusion, hunger, or even playful curiosity. She reacted with instinctual motherhood. She slowly, deliberately, turned her head and, with the utmost gentleness, nudged the baby monkey with her wet nose. Then, using her large, rough tongue, she began to lick Kiko, a slow, meticulous motion that was the universal language of primate grooming. She was cleaning him, soothing him, marking him as her own. Kiko stopped struggling. He gripped the fur tighter, burying himself in the warmth. The emotional shutdown, the failure to thrive that had threatened to extinguish him, reversed in that singular, impossible moment. He had found his anchor. He had found density, rhythm, and boundless, unconditional contact comfort. The climax was not a surgery, or a heroic feat of endurance. It was an act of biological surrender to empathy. Luna had become Kiko's surrogate mother. From that day forward, Kiko thrived. The arrangement defied every rule of nature and biology, yet it worked perfectly. Kiko learned to ride on Luna's back as she moved around the house, clinging fiercely to her thick fur, using her as his personal transport and security blanket. He would sleep curled into the crook of her neck, feeling the vibration of her gentle snores. Luna, in turn, was fiercely protective, growling softly at anyone who approached her strange, hairy passenger too quickly. Her sorrow lifted. Her maternal drive found its impossible, perfect focus. Elian filmed their daily interactions, Luna allowing Kiko to pick imaginary fleas from her snout, Kiko chattering happily while riding through the garden. The videos, uploaded anonymously at first, exploded across the internet. People were captivated by the sight of the giant dog patiently mothering the tiny, terrified monkey. The story reached the sanctuary, which, upon seeing the undeniable, stabilizing bond, agreed that separating them now would be devastating. Kiko was home. The journey ended not with a release back into the wild, which would have been impossible for the infant, but with the creation of an entirely new definition of family. Elian, Luna, and Kiko became an inseparable trio, a quiet, beautiful testament to the idea that necessity and compassion are the greatest architects of connection, capable of bridging the deepest chasms of species difference. Kiko was no longer a frozen, desperate orphan clinging to death, but a deeply loved, flourishing baby, eternally secured to the warm, beating heart of his canine protector. This is the end of Elian, Luna, and Kiko's initial story, but their legacy of empathy lives on, inspiring millions globally. If this journey of rescue and incredible connection touched your heart, don't just click away. Hit that like button right now, subscribe for more unbelievable true stories of animal resilience, and tell us in the comments, *, where are you watching this story from? What city or country are you in right now? *, let us know, because this shared global wonder is part of the magic.